Everyone's always focused on the Wild West, fellas, but don't sleep on the East Coast. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to First Take. Thank you so much for being with us. Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman, I'm Molly Karen Rose. Fellas, hope you had a fabulous weekend. A ton of great hoops, and that's where I want to start, but with the NBA. LaMarcus Aldridge, according to Woj, is expected to become the latest member of the Nets roster, taking his talents to Brooklyn. Aldridge was averaging just over 13 points per game for San Antonio before his buyout. Gentlemen, take a look at the Nets squad. Please just marinate on these names, would you? Kyrie Irving, James Harden, Kevin Durant, Blake Griffin, LaMarcus Aldridge. That's just to name a few, all joining forces for a playoff run. Brooklyn seems to be heading for Max's super duper team level, as he calls it. But Stephen A., are you getting turned off by the Nets stacking the deck here?
I am. And here's my thing, Max and Molly. This is what's rubbing me the wrong way. It's not the KD, Kyrie, James Harden thing. I got that. That's Lethal Weapon 3. I'm good with that, Max. It's not a problem. But when the names Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge come to my mind, that's what really irritates me about this. And here's why. Because I'm looking at guys. I remember the last 2 years in Portland, LaMarcus Aldridge averaging 23 a game, and he was supposed to be that glue, with Tim Duncan fading away into the twilight before he was going to retire, with Kawhi Leonard being there and all of that stuff. He was supposed to be that guy. Blake Griffin, remember? I mean, come on now. Remember Lob City? Remember all of that? You were there.
I was there.
You were hosting. Yep. You was hosting a radio show in LA for 6 years. You remember Lob City? He was the cornerstone of the franchise. Both of them came up short. Never even been in the conference finals, for crying out loud, okay? Even though I think LaMarcus Aldridge was at least once in San Antonio. I'm just saying, when I look at that, and then I see you jumping on this bandwagon, it's something that turns me off about that, because you were supposed to be one of those dudes. You were supposed to be one of those dudes who was the cornerstone of the franchise that was leading the team to the promised land, as opposed to just sitting up there and just chilling out and having a ring slid on your finger. Right? That's what I'm talking about. That's a turnoff for me. And again, with Kevin Durant, it's not fair, and I'll openly admit that to bring this up, but it's apropos only from the standpoint of just paying attention to history in that regard. When he went to Golden State, he went there because he couldn't capture the chip in OKC playing with Russell Westbrook. But when he went to Golden State, he was the man. He was still the best, even though Steph Curry's the greatest shooter we've ever seen in our lifetime, and him and Klay Thompson are the best shooter backcourt we've ever seen in our lifetime. Kevin Durant was still the best player on that team. We understand how lethal he was. Blake Griffin has fallen off significantly, and to the point where he gets a dunk and we're celebrating. It's damn near back page news. Okay, and now LaMarcus Aldridge, who just weaned out in San Antonio, suddenly he's on this team. And I'm just like, Dan, what's next? We gonna get the best ball player in the NBA too? I mean, what the hell is next, for crying out loud? That's how I look at it, and that's the turnoff portion. If those dudes didn't capture a chip, but was still lethal in terms of being straight up ballers, Max, I would have a completely different mentality. But the drop off has been so precipitous. The fact that they are about to get a ring, right, under those conditions, I'm like, oh,
but
damn.
That's not you getting turned off by the Nets.
That's right.
That's you getting turned off by the players.
Right.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Then that's fine. I was going to say, if you're
you're not going to Nets.
The Nets ain't getting LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin. They're getting the remains of LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin. Let's be honest. What does LaMarcus Aldridge do well right now? Was he going to get a 20-minute-a-game player? He can play basketball, sure, but he ain't LaMarcus Aldridge anymore. And by the way, he never really could shoot the three. He was like a deep mid-range shooter. It's one of the reasons he and DeRozan, it's one of the reasons the Spurs weren't better with those guys in a three-point shooting league. They're taking shots that are just as difficult to hit, but you only get 2 points instead of 3 if you make them. And LaMarcus Aldridge isn't even that guy anymore. He's a faded version of himself. And Blake Griffin, who knows what you're getting? Likely not much. So I'm not mad at the Nets or at KD. You talk about, this is the second time it's happened for KD now. This is totally different for me with KD. KD in Golden State couldn't get by Golden State, and then Golden State couldn't get by LeBron. So they joined forces. They're like, that's really about LeBron. Let's beat this guy somehow. Golden State won 73 games. The all-time record in the regular season came, a possession or two away of winning the championship? and then added an MVP player in KD, they'd have destroyed everyone with someone less than KD because they were already that stacked. That doesn't prove anything to me, KD. I don't care if you won Finals MVP. How could you not? You have to worry about Clay and Steph and everybody. This is different. KD went to Brooklyn off an Achilles, catastrophic injury, never knowing if you're going to be the same again. Brings Kyrie at first. Went a year like that. Then they trade for Harden. There was no guarantee Harden and Kyrie would even be able to share a backcourt. You know, like, you have to take your hat off to those guys, the way they figured out the chemistry, and it took them like a week. So I'm not going to be down on KD for surrounding himself with talent, for building a team the way LeBron did in Miami.
Right.
That's fine. And as far as these dudes joining him, you know, you mentioned Blake. You can mention LaMarcus Aldridge. You can mention DeAndre Jordan. Nick Claxton may be the guy you want there. I mean, like, it's not like they have a lot. It's name brands. It's not great players anymore in terms of these buyout types they're getting now.
Well, see, Max Kellerman, you went someplace where I wanted to go. I just wanted you to go first. And because you know me, there's a method to my madness. Because you know who I ultimately blame for all of this? I blame LeBron James. It's all his fault. It's all his fault, okay? First of all, you go to it is hypocritical of me because even though I didn't like what happened, it was in South Beach. So why would I complain about having to go to South Beach? I mean, come on now. You understand? So I'm just throwing myself out on Front Street and that. I got it. But remember when they won the championship in Cleveland? And then the next year he came back, you had D-Wade to the mix. You had Deron Williams to the mix as well. You tried to do something like that in order to repeat as champions. KD ultimately hijacks your run because what does he do? He goes to Golden State, and now he's one up you there. And then he won back-to-back titles. Should have won three. Would have had a three-peat had he not torn his Achilles. Would have easily had a three-peat without question, okay? But then after that, what happens? Now he comes to Brooklyn, and this is what he's doing. So you've got a situation where LeBron has opened the floodgates. Thank God. Hopefully, AD will be back. He'll be healthy because with him and LeBron and adding Andrew Drummond, I think Andrew Drummond is a big pickup, which we'll get into. But in the end, what it comes down to, thank God, there's some level of competition. Because, see, that's the biggest thing. When I appeared with KD on the boardroom on this show on ESPN Plus from before, when I appeared on there, okay, what I explained was it's all about competition. I'm old school, man. I grew up watching the NBA. I've been covering the NBA for 26, 27 years. I've been watching it all my life pretty much. I love the NBA and I love competition. And you want to see people wanting to go against one another. And there's this culture where everybody's trying to join one another. And that goes against everything that I'm about. And I think that KD was definitely more significant because you joined a juggernaut. They had won 73 games and you joined a juggernaut.
But what Magic really showed these dudes is
Magic?
Yeah, excuse me. LeBron really showed, I'm going to talk about Magic in a second. What LeBron really showed these dudes, including KD, is that we can do the same thing the teams are doing. Because I think, the reason I said Magic is I think about the Lakers in 79-80. That's Magic's rookie year, right? It's him and Kareem.
But they drafted Worthy.
But still, no.
It was a draft,
I'm not talking about Worthy, though. I'm talking about Jamal Wilkes, and I'm talking about.
He's already on the squad, right?
Norm Nixon, right?
Norm Nixon was already there.
That's right. And then they traded for Spencer Haywood, right?
Yeah, but my point is, it was draft, though.
Okay, my point is what LeBron showed the world and other players like KD is. You see the way the teams are the boss and the GMs put together? Because the Lakers had a super-duper team. Stephen A., did they need Spencer Haywood? Like, they needed to grab an all-star power forward to go with all-time great center. They didn't need to do it, but they did it. And what LeBron showed KD is we can do that, too. I'm going to take Chris Bosh. Me and Wade and Chris Bosh are going to do it. KD said, bet. I'll just go and join Golden State. Oh, those aren't the rules? Bet. I'll make my own team. Me, Kyrie, and Harden. What's the difference between him doing that and a GM doing that in L.A.?
I understand that. But what I'm trying to tell you is that the players themselves are the ones on the court competing. I'm not saying that the GMs, the executives don't compete out there. And I'm not faulting Sean Marks, who I think is doing an outstanding job. And I'm not faulting the Brooklyn Nets. I don't blame you. You could be all over me if I was doing that. I would do the same thing if I was them. LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin gave up about $20 million to get there, okay? They gave up about $20 million to end up on the roster.
An expensive ring.
Exactly. There we go.
They're buying an expensive ring.
They're buying a ring. But what I'm saying is I'm not
going to the NBA. Oh, die with the lie. Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge Aldridge are feeling the hate for joining the super team Nets. Blake saying this in the response to the critics. It's kind of funny to me because for the last couple of years, all I heard is how bad I am. You sign with this team and everybody's like, that's not fair. Stephen A., some hypocrisy here. Is the Griffin Aldridge criticism justified?
Well, first of all, it's justified. And secondly, and more importantly...
Can I ask you something? How could you ask Stephen A. that question? He's the guy doing the criticizing. Is it justified? Who's been louder about it than Stephen A.?
That would be true. You're
I know.
absolutely
I didn't know if I should just put him on the spot like that on Front Street right out of the gate.
I got no problem with it.
I
said what I said. I meant what the hell I said. Ain't nobody scared of Blake Griffin. I respect the hell out of him. I really do. Not just as a basketball player, but as a person. But I said what I said. I meant what the hell I meant. All right? The fact of the matter is that he's got this wrong, though, in this sense. It wasn't me that said that. Remember, I was pointing out how Blake Griffin, and you remember when you were talking about Max, how the dissipation and skills, and I was saying he's a place where he doesn't want to be.
Notice he's dunking now.
It's Detroit. He doesn't want to be there. He's not that interested in being there, et cetera, et cetera. You know what? You depart from L.A. to go to the Motor City. It's a difference. And you look at the Clippers franchise and what he had there compared to what he has in Detroit. It's a difference. That's what I pointed to. I certainly didn't point to some flagrant dissipation of skills. As a matter of fact, the only argument that we made, and I still stand by that, is who would you rather have, Blake Griffin or Carmelo Anthony, when we were talking about both of them. And I said I'd rather have Carmelo Anthony. And I didn't think that Blake Griffin was Carmelo Anthony. This is years ago. We had that discussion. That's the only negative thing I've ever said about Blake Griffin, and I don't consider it negative. It was just me praising Carmelo Anthony because, damn it, Carmelo Anthony deserved it. He deserves it now, and I'm very proud of my brother for doing what he's been doing.
But in between, he didn't deserve it so much.
Well, you could say he didn't deserve it, but he
does deserve it now. He deserved it then.
He had departed from the Knicks. And then remember, he was in Oklahoma City and then from Oklahoma City to Houston. But there were some issues in both respective places, which I highlighted. But for him to be out of the league was just ridiculous. And Carmelo Anthony has proved me right. I'm proud of that, brother. Now let me get back to Blake Griffin. That's all I said. I've never said anything about Blake Griffin couldn't play. Matter of fact, I specifically pointed out he can play. Here's where Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge needs to understand where I'm coming from. KD might have left Oklahoma City to go to Golden State, Max and Molly. But KD was a superstar. And he arrived as a superstar. And even though they were a bomb squad, he still elevated them because he's that great. Okay? That's what I'm talking about. When you look at LaMarcus Aldridge and Blake Griffin, they were once the cornerstones of a franchise in Portland and L.A. respectively. When LaMarcus Aldridge went to San Antonio, that was a big-time free agent pickup for the San Antonio Spurs. And we were looking at them different because LaMarcus Aldridge had arrived, and obviously they had the other pieces there with Manu and Kawhi and all of that other stuff, with Tim Duncan fading into the twilight. We understood that. What I'm saying is that you look at them now, it's as if they are literally hanging on for the sole express purpose of getting a championship while making a minimal contribution. That is not the same as you being some big-time talent and then going to a team as a big-time talent where you're playing a pivotal role. And so what I'm saying is for them to join a squad where you're talking about Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge possibly not even being a fourth option. A fourth option. I'm like, damn, that's all I'm saying. And I don't apologize for that because I'm about this competition, man. It means everything to me in this sense. I want to see who you go against. How many times do I sit here with you, Max, across from you and talking to Molly? How many times do I pay attention to two things? Resume, and I talk about who you win against.
Quality of opposition.
The quality of opposition. And when the scales are tipped so dramatically that there's barely competition. I'm not saying that's the really case. I'm saying that's the intent. That's where I get alarmed. That's all I'm saying.
Blake is right about this, and you're wrong. Okay. And I will tell you why.
Please do.
First of all, Max. The media is not a monolith. We all have different things to say.
Sure.
But overwhelmingly, what Blake has been hearing recently, not from you, is you stink. You can't play anymore.
Yeah, he didn't hear that from me.
No, he didn't hear that part from you, but he heard that. And now he's hearing overwhelmingly from the media, it's not fair. They got Blake. So he has a right to feel that way. It's not directed at you or me or just generally like, hold up, time out. Most of what is said is I can't play, and now most of what is said is it's not fair. The Nets got me. How's that work? Okay, that's number one. Number two, you're essentially saying he's ring chasing. And that when he was the cornerstone of a franchise, he couldn't get it done. And the same goes for LaMarcus Aldridge. And you're right about that. You're right. They weren't good enough to be the best player on a championship team. Maybe not even the second best player on a championship team. But I'm not going to sit here and castigate players who've come to a conclusion, especially at this point in their career, that's not easy. I can't be the man on a championship team. Know why, Stephen A? Not good enough. They're not quite good enough. It's not that they weren't fantastic players. They were. But there are levels to this. When you have a league with LeBron and KD and those guys, that's a level above the highest level Blake or LaMarcus Aldridge have ever played on. That's not a slight to them. It's praising the level that LeBron and KD have attained. So I'm not going to sit here and cast aspersions and kind of take credit away from guys, especially when they're older, who acknowledge that, okay, you know what I can be? I can be the fourth option on a championship team, especially when the addition of Blake and LaMarcus Aldridge doesn't make it unfair to the Nets. They don't really move the needle. What moves the needle for the Nets was KD, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving. That's why the Nets are going to destroy everybody.
Okay. Here's my point. First of all, I'm allowed to not like something without it actually being a criticism. It just doesn't happen to be my preference. I'm not knocking Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge. I get it. But my point is that if this were a superstar that we saw descend before our very eyes, we would be like, why not just retire? As opposed to be seen as somebody who's the fourth, fifth, sixth wheel on a team riding the coattails of other people because they were so great at one moment in time and expectations were so high for them at one moment in time that to not reach that, but to still stick around, to essentially be in a uniform, sitting on the bench damn near as much as I am, okay, watching the other guys perform, but getting a ring. I'm not saying that's literally the case with LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin. Of course that. I'm not trying to disrespect them. I respect where they're coming from. I'm just saying that as a basketball purist who loves the game and loves the competitive fervor, is it all right for me to sit up there and say, I don't like it without it being a criticism?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. That I agree with, and let me explain this real quick, Molly. I need about a minute.
Sure.
I was on KD, as were you, for going to the Warriors because people like us in the media put so much stress on winning championships, right? Barkley doesn't have a chip. Shaq gives him stuff about it on the air, right? Like, that's how it goes. So these players want chips. I gave KD criticism because he reverse engineered it. He went to a team that couldn't not win a chip without him because they almost did it. They had one without him. They're one of the best teams ever made, right? And now KD joined. So what does that really prove, KD? Well, I won MVP of the finals. Stop it. You couldn't not do that. You're a great player. You joined an impossible team to beat with you on it. This is a version of that, basically, to me, is what you're saying, Stephen, and I agree with that. I think guys like Blake and LaMarcus Aldridge are there going, look, they have the names of great players because they were at their best. And now they're going to add a ring. But they're not, adding a ring's not going to say anything about them as players. That's the point. A ring is supposed to say something about you as a player. These rings won't do that for Blake and Aldridge, other than the fact that they gave up money to go get it. That it was important to them, that they wanted to go buy it. That's how important it was to them. Yeah. That I agree with.
All right. We're going to leave it there, fellas. Plenty more to come here on First Take. Are the 49ers